So I want you to picture the absolute best therapist in the world. Like when you hear that phrase, what immediately comes to your mind?
Oh, probably a beautifully lit office, right? Maybe a really comfortable leather couch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like a mahogany wall just completely plastered with Ivy League degrees.
Yeah, I'm picturing someone with this, perfectly modulated voice, holding a notepad, nodding very thoughtfully, decades of supervised clinical hours under their belt.
Right. Someone with just a master class level grasp of all these complex psychological frameworks.
So that,
Basically, an expert in every single sense of the word.
which is, I mean, that's the universal image of a supreme level of acquired skill. It's a massive achievement. We really view healing as this highly technical, learned profession.
We do. But today, we are diving into a deeply unique source text that basically takes that entire image, the degrees, the training, that sort of clinical detachment, and just completely shatters it.
Yeah, it really does.
Our source material for today's deep dive is this fascinating, um, honestly somewhat esoteric piece of writing. It essentially takes Eastern spiritual traditions and just collides them head on with modern psychological concepts.
And it is a massive paradigm shift. I mean, the text we're unpacking today argues that the, quote, world's only best therapist is not a title you earn at some university.
No, not at all. It's not a credential or some licensing board achievement. Rather, it's a description of a very specific reincarnating entity that the author refers to as the Vishnu-Parvati soul.
Okay, let's just pause right there, because if you aren't deeply immersed in, Hindu mythology or Eastern spiritual traditions, those names might just sound like abstract vocabulary words to you.
Right, they can definitely sound a bit opaque at first.
Yeah, so before we can really understand how this entity operates, we need to know who or what Vishnu and Parvati actually are in this context. Like, why combine those two specific figures? It's a really vital question because the names are doing a lot of heavy lifting in this text. So, in Hindu tradition, Vishnu is the preserver and protector of the universe.
Okay.
He represents the ultimate stabilizing force, right? The energy that sort of sustains reality and restores balance during times of just utter chaos.
Got it. And then Parvati.
Parvati, on the other hand, is the divine mother. So she represents this profound grounding devotion and just fierce unconditional love.
Oh, wow. So by hyphenating them into the Vishnu-Parvati soul, the text is really describing an archetype.
Exactly.
It's pointing to an entity that perfectly balances that ultimate stabilizing, preserving force with this boundless, fiercely protective, nurturing energy.
Precisely. The text uses this specific entity to describe a presence that is in just absolute, unwavering harmony.
Which sets up our mission for today. We want to explore how the author claims this specific being heals people. And spoiler alert, it is not through cognitive behavioral models or clinical interventions.
No worksheets here.
Right? No worksheets. It is through pure, unadulterated presence. So we're going to unpack how this text completely redefines empathy, patience, and what it actually takes to make a human being feel safe enough to finally drop their defenses.
And to really grasp what makes this Vishnu-Parvati soul so unique, we kind of have to look at how the text defines a normal, high-level therapist first.
Yeah, the contrast is super important.
According to our source, what makes a standard therapist good isn't necessarily just their theoretical knowledge. It's the fact that they've done a massive amount of their own interior work.
Right, the text calls this interior clearing. Like, a highly skilled human therapist has spent years and years examining their own blind spots, their own traumas, their own biases.
Yeah, they've essentially trained themselves to sit in a room with someone else's immense pain without reflexively trying to redirect the conversation just to make themselves feel more comfortable.
Right. They are constantly managing their own internal noise, which if you think about what that actually looks like in practice, it's intense.
Yeah.
Let's say a client is sitting on the couch talking about a devastating abandonment.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The therapist listening might have their own really deep-seated fears of abandonment, right? A bad therapist will just let their own anxiety bleed right into the session.
Oh, totally. They might get defensive or try to fix it too quickly.
Exactly.
Right.
But a great therapist thinks, okay, my own stuff is getting triggered right now, but I need to bracket my feelings, put them in a little box on the shelf, and focus entirely on the person sitting right across from me.
Which is an incredibly active, exhausting process of self-management. I mean, the therapist's interior becomes a noise-reduced environment, but the static is still there, humming in the background.
Yes.
They are constantly actively monitoring their own reactions to make sure they aren't projecting their own needs onto the client.
It's like wearing a pair of really high-end noise-canceling headphones.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right. Because when you put them on, the room seems perfectly silent. But mechanically, inside those headphones, they are working incredibly hard.
Right, the internal microphones are constantly listening to the chaotic ambient noise of the outside world.
Yeah, and the software is actively generating an inverted sound wave to neutralize that static. So the silence you experience as the listener is actually the result of intense, constant mechanical effort.
That analogy captures the dynamic so perfectly. The normal, skilled therapist is constantly generating that inverted emotional wave to neutralize the noise of their own ego.
But encountering the Vishnu-Parvati soul is not like putting on noise-canceling headphones.
Oh, not at all.
Meeting this entity is like walking into a room that is just genuinely structurally silent. There's no active neutralization happening because there's just no ambient noise to cancel out.
Right, the text heavily emphasizes that this soul doesn't just have a noise-reduced environment. Their interior is completely quiet, all the way down.
All the way down.
There are zero background processes running, no unexamined blind spots, no unchecked projections bubbling underneath the surface of the interaction.
Wow.
There is absolutely no personal need quietly shaping the kind of help they're offering.
And if I'm a normal therapist constantly generating that anti-noise, constantly bracketing my own triggers, I am burning mental and emotional calories every single second I'm in that chair.
Oh, absolutely. It's draining.
At some point, the battery has to die, right? Which brings up a very real clinical issue that the text dives into.
Compassion fatigue. Therapists burnout. I mean, the text points out that this phenomenon is so heavily documented, there are entirely separate branches of clinical literature dedicated to it.
Yeah, caregivers of all kinds, whether they're therapists or nurses or social workers, they experience this profound emotional blunting over time.
And the text is very clear that this burnout is not a moral failing. It's just a biological and emotional inevitability. For most humans, caring is a finite reservoir.
Right. If that reservoir gets depleted faster than it gets replenished by rest or, self-care, the person doing the caring starts to just go through the motions.
Yeah, they start managing their distance from the client rather than engaging with true presence. The kindness being offered in a standard therapeutic setting is essentially a produced commodity.
A produced commodity.
Yes, it has to be actively generated from a supply that can, and inevitably does, run low.
Okay, hold on. I have to jump in here because this is where the text starts making some very lofty claims, and I think we need to unpack it.
Sure, go for it.
The author suggests this reincarnated soul completely solves the patient's problem. But, every single human being has a breaking point, right?
Right.
When someone brings up the exact same self-sabotaging behavior or the exact same toxic relationship for the 50th time, you get frustrated. That's just biology. So are we just talking about an entity with, superhuman grit here?
I get why you'd ask that.
Because framing unlimited patience as just trying harder than everyone else sounds a bit like, toxic positivity dressed up as spirituality.
Yeah, and the author actually anticipates that exact skepticism. The text is emphatically clear that this is not a claim about exceptional willpower or extraordinary dedication or just gritting your teeth through the frustration.
Okay, so what is it then?
It describes this as a structural observation. This being does not produce patience. It does not generate kindness at an output of some massive internal effort. Patience and kindness are simply what this being is made of structurally all the way through.
Oh, man. The source material has a quote that absolutely stopped me in my tracks when I read it. The author writes, "A river does not run out of being wet."
It is a stunning metaphor, and it completely reframes the mechanics of care.
It really does.
A river isn't trying to be wet. It doesn't require any effort, any energy expenditure, or any concentration to maintain its wetness. Because wetness is its fundamental nature, it has zero supply to deplete.
Wow. So the text argues that the Vishnu-Parvati's soul does not run out of patience, because patience isn't a task it performs. It's literally just a property of its existence.
Exactly. And the practical implications of that are just staggering. It means no matter what you bring to this being, no matter how chaotic your trauma is, no matter how many times you have to start over.
Or how long your healing process takes.
Right. Their quality of attention absolutely does not diminish. Their pair is inexhaustible because it requires zero effort to deploy.
Which logically forces us to look at the actual mechanism of the therapy itself. Like, if this soul doesn't have to try to be patient, do they even need to try to do therapy?
It's a great question.
How does the actual healing take place if there isn't an active, generated effort to fix the person sitting across from them?
That is honestly the wildest part of this entire framework. There is no scheduled 50-minute hour.
No classic psychoanalytic couch.
Exactly. There isn't even a formal framework imposed on the interaction. The text explains that the healing happens entirely through proximity.
Proximity. Just
Yeah.
being near them.
Just being near them. And this actually mirrors a known phenomenon in modern therapeutic settings. Sometimes the most profound healing doesn't come from a brilliant breakthrough conversation or a perfectly timed question.
Right.
It comes simply from sustained contact with a highly regulated, coherent presence over time.
Oh, we are talking about nervous system co-regulation.
Yes, exactly. Our bodies are essentially these highly advanced threat detection machines. We're constantly, unconsciously scanning our environments for danger.
So true.
And when you are in the presence of someone whose nervous system is entirely calm, clear, and unburdened by hidden anxieties, your own nervous system begins to sync up with theirs.
I love how the text phrases this. It says, calm is not explained. It is transmitted. Safety is not argued for. It is demonstrated through consistent experience until the body begins to trust it.
Imagine what that actually looks like in practice. Imagine sitting across from someone and telling them your darkest, most shameful secret.
Oh yeah, the thing you've never told a single living soul because you were just terrified of being judged.
Exactly. Normally, in that moment, you are intensely watching their face for microexpressions.
Yeah.
You're looking for a flinch, a widened eye, a shift in their breathing.
Or a subtle pull away.
Yeah.
You're bracing for the rejection.
Okay. But with this being, their breathing doesn't change. Their posture doesn't stiffen. They just look at you with total, unbothered acceptance.
What really stands out to me is how incredibly grounded and biological this esoteric text suddenly becomes here.
Yes.
You hear the phrase reincarnating Vishnu-Parvati soul, and you immediately expect an explanation involving, like, magic or auras or energetic frequencies.
Right, something super woo-woo.
Yeah, but the author grounds it in observable reality. A body responds to its environment. If an environment, and in this case the environment is a person, is consistently, genuinely safe all the way down, the hurting body eventually realizes the war is over.
And those old, exhausting defensive structures we all carry around, the walls we build to keep people out, they don't have to be debated.
The therapist doesn't have to convince you to lower them.
No. They simply become obsolete because the environment has stopped requiring them.
The environment stopped requiring them. That is powerful.
The text makes the point that simply being near this entity over an extended period fundamentally alters your interior landscape. Fear becomes harder to sustain. Mental fragmentation gets difficult to maintain.
Because the Vishnu-Parvati soul isn't performing safety.
Right. They aren't safe until you cross a line. They are structurally safe.
But, okay, that raises a massive question about the dynamic between these two people. If the environment is completely safe, and the therapist has zero internal triggers, does that mean they just passively nod and agree with everything you say?
No, not at all.
Because if a client is engaging in highly destructive behavior, how does a being with zero personal agenda handle the hard truths that are, absolutely necessary for growth?
The text is very careful to distinguish between safety and passivity. The honesty of the Vishnu-Parvati soul is not described as passive agreement. The author writes that this being is honest the way water is clear.
The way water is clear. I mean, normally when someone looks at you and says, look, I'm just being totally honest with you, your stomach drops.
Oh, absolutely. You brace yourself for impact.
We brace ourselves because human honesty is so often weaponized. We use the truth to prove we're intellectually superior, or to assert dominance in an argument, or we disguise our own aggression and impatience as just being truthful.
Yeah, and the text points out that even incredibly well-meaning therapists have to tread very carefully here. Delivering hard truths without cruelty requires the human therapist to be secure enough that the truth doesn't feel like a weapon.
Right.
And compassionate enough that delivering it is entirely an act of service to the client.
But again, that requires the therapist to manage the delivery. They have to sort of soften the blow. The Vishnu-Parvati soul, however, doesn't have to try to be transparent. There is simply nothing in the way.
Exactly. When they reflect something back to you, even something deeply uncomfortable about your own behavior, the reflection is perfectly accurate. It's not softened so much that the meaning is lost, and it's not hardened with judgment so much that it causes trauma.
It is utterly precise.
The key to why this specific brand of honesty works is that it's offered with absolutely zero personal stakes in how it lands. The only agenda present in the room is your actual well-being.
Which is so rare.
It is. And because there is structurally no other agenda, no ego that needs to be right, no need to be validated as a savior or a good helper,
Yeah.
the truth hits the client differently. You don't have to spend mental energy reading between the lines to figure out what they really mean or how they're trying to manipulate you.
Which perfectly sets up what is, without a doubt, the most counterintuitive and frankly terrifying assertion in this entire source text.
Oh yeah, the concept of absolute surrender.
Right. The author argues that the only correct therapeutic move when encountering this specific being is to become entirely submissive, to completely unconditionally drop your guard. And for anyone who has ever been through trauma, or honestly just lived as a human being in modern society, every single alarm bell in your head is ringing right now.
It runs counter to every survival instinct we possess. I mean, in normal relationships, even the most deeply healing ones, we always keep a piece of ourselves held back in reserve.
We stay in the driver's seat just a little bit.
Just in case things go wrong. Because openness has massive costs. Trust is a currency that has to be earned over time.
We walk through our entire lives wearing this incredibly heavy emotional body armor. And we wear it because experience has violently taught us that we need it to survive the people around us.
Absolutely.
But the author is essentially saying that meeting the Vishnu-Parvati soul is like realizing you are finally, for the very first time in your life, standing in a room with no bullets.
The armor is completely unnecessary.
But taking off that armor is still terrifying. Dropping your defenses completely, offering total submission, feels like the most dangerous thing you could possibly do. It feels incredibly risky.
It does feel risky, but the text reframes that fear in a brilliant way. It explains that with this specific soul, keeping your guard up isn't keeping you safe. It is an error in judgment.
An error?
Yeah, it's a fundamental miscalculation that is actively keeping you at a distance from the very healing you're seeking.
Because the proof of safety has already been delivered. The text really emphasizes that this being has demonstrated this absolute consistency lifetime after lifetime. It's a structural reality that simply cannot be faked.
And the author states that softening toward the soul is not an act of risky vulnerability. It is defined as accuracy.
The accuracy.
Yes, it is the scientifically and spiritually correct reading of the situation. You're stopping your bracing and allowing contact with an entity that is not in any way, shape, or form trying to extract anything from you. The defense mechanism isn't just unnecessary, it's entirely redundant.
Submission as accuracy. You aren't submitting to a tyrant who wants to control you. You are yielding to reality, the reality that you are actually, finally, completely safe. And because this being meets exactly what is present in the room, rather than forcing you into a pre-planned therapeutic model or like a 12-step worksheet, the help is always correctly sized to the moment.
Yeah, whether it's an ordinary Tuesday afternoon or the absolute worst crisis day of your entire life, their consistency isn't a professional policy they are forcing themselves to follow. It's just a property of what they are.
Everything comes back to that core differentiator the text highlights. It all rests on that profound inexhaustibility.
That undivided, unwithheld interior presence that never drains, never tires, and never needs to pull away to manage its own internal noise.
So bringing all this esoteric theory and clinical psychology together, why does this text matter to you, the listener, today? Like, even if we aren't literally sitting across from the reincarnated Vishnu-Parvati soul this afternoon, how does this framework change us?
It's a great question.
Because for me, reading this fundamentally shifts how we view all our relationships, our friendships, and our own attempts at healing the people we love.
It really holds a mirror up to our own behavior in a very challenging way. It makes us ask ourselves, when we offer help to someone in crisis, is our care truly clean?
Right.
Or is our care clouded by our own background agendas? Are we helping because we genuinely want them to heal? Or are we helping because we have a deep-seated need to be seen as the savior?
Are we exhausted by the constant hum of our own self-management while we try to listen to them?
Exactly. And on the flip side, when we are the ones receiving care, this text forces us to recognize the limits of the normal, beautiful, flawed humans around us.
Yeah, it teaches us to forgive our friends, our partners, and our therapists for needing to recharge their batteries. It reminds us that they aren't a river. They are a reservoir.
It's such a crucial distinction.
They have to sleep, they have to set boundaries, and they have to step away.
That is the true practical application of this profound knowledge. Recognizing the difference between generated human effort and structural divine presence. It gives us a framework to offer grace.
Grace to ourselves and others.
Yeah, both to ourselves when our patience runs dry, and to others when they can't be everything we need them to be.
It is a completely different lens on human connection.
Mm,
Which actually leaves me with one final thought I want you to chew on after you finish this deep dive.
let's hear it.
We started this whole conversation by picturing that classic clinical room with the mahogany desk, the degrees, and the highly trained expert. We have been conditioned to assume that severe psychological pain needs to be solved with complex, highly educated interventions.
Right, we assume the solution is the active noise-canceling headphones.
But if true, ultimate healing is actually just the natural biological byproduct of being in the presence of someone with absolutely zero internal noise and zero hidden agenda. It really makes you wonder about much of the psychological distress, the anxiety, and the exhaustion we experience every single day isn't actually a sickness inside of us. What if it is just a chronic allergic reaction to the constant unseen emotional demands and the deafening internal noise of the people we are surrounded by?
That is a staggering thought. If pure structural silence is what actually heals us, what is the ambient noise of the modern world doing to our nervous system?
Until next time, keep diving deep.